Hello, everyone. Delighted to see you. Welcome to a wonderful series that we created both with the Scopely Peer Group and the RMI. More from the team very shortly. My name is Oliver Hurry. I'm the founder and the chair of the Scopely Peer Group. You can go to scopelypeergroup.com if you want to find out more about what we do. But majority of what we do is help people who've got probably one of the most difficult jobs in sustainability, which is working out supply chain decarbonisation. Trying to help them understand what exactly they could be doing, they should be doing, what others are doing, all while the whole thing changes around you. It's almost an impossible job. And one of the reasons why I think the Scope 3 Peer Group is now nearly 4,000 people globally who's scratching their collective heads and trying to just do better on the thing that everyone should have done yesterday. So delighted to have you all here. Delighted to be partnering with the RMI, an organisation I've known for many years and have a deep affinity to. So huge thanks to them, and we'll hear more from them. So just wanted to start this session, and for those people coming in, you all submitted challenges, as often many people do. I feel like a therapist sometimes. Everyone's pouring their hearts out to me about their problems. So this is the summary of the challenges that you guys submitted and a number of others submitted for this meeting today. So we'll go into more about what the meeting's about, but ultimately, supplier engagement is number one. Supplier engagement has been the number one theme challenge for 6 years in pretty much every single of the near 100 meetings we've had in the Scope 3 Peer Group during that time. So it's unsurprising that that does boil down to that. Data and methodology is always number two, which isn't a surprise either, because again, that's really for many is the crux of it. If we don't get that right, we can't do anything else. Number three is great to see, because obviously that's a key theme for this series, is how to really get low carbon procurement and sourcing of low carbon products and materials working effectively. Inevitably, we spend our lives as professionals trying to convince our bosses and leadership to be allowed to do stuff. So business cases and internal alignment never goes away. It's an eternal job. And obviously we will be getting on, particularly later into this series of meetings, about how do we scale those solutions and policy levers. So I hope this was useful. You can maybe even spot some of your challenges there in the examples, but hopefully it gives you a sense of what others in this session are thinking and feeling. So delighted to meet you. I'll be sort of facilitating through this session. We've got an amazing agenda that we've got put together. This is a meeting. This isn't just a webinar. Not a fan of the word webinar. I think it creates a kind of feeling that you're there to sit and listen. You're not. You're there to take part, ask questions, and get involved. So if you've got any comments, thoughts, ideas, you want to comment on other people's thoughts and ideas, please use the chat, but also raise your hand. Feel free to put your hand up, ask questions, get involved. We've got a packed agenda with some amazing people here and some people I know very well who I know will share some great ideas. So feel free to get involved. And with that, I'll hand over to the RMI team.
Thank you so much, Ali, for the introduction and for the partnership. I'm so honored to be here. My name is Hao. I am a manager with RMI. The questions that you have just shared are so important, and we'll be able to guide some of the discussion today. I really appreciate everybody who are able to join today as well. So for those of you who are not so familiar with RMI, we are a nonprofit organization that focus on accelerating the global clean energy transition. On the Scope 3 topic, we focus on emission transparency through sector-specific carbon accounting, as well as low carbon procurement strategies that drive the real sectoral decarbonization. So our work includes demand research, demand aggregation, market-based mechanism design, capacity building, etc. Today, I'm joined by my team, Iris, Pintian, and Wenjuan, who will be speaking a lot more about the low carbon how-to guide that we put together in partnership with Scope 3 Peer Group and the webinar series, and answer the questions that you may have. But before diving into the topic today, we would like to start with a quick question, as you can see on the screen. Since the procurement needs to be specific to each material sector, and we're planning to host a sector-specific deep dive, we would like to understand which raw material sector you are most interested in learning about low carbon procurement. For example, metals, chemicals, fuels, or others. Please type your answer in the chat, and we will leverage those answers to select the topic for the deep dive um, in the future. I see a lot of good thoughts in the chat now. It's great to see the range of interests coming in.
I think you're
Well,
probably
it's
feeling happy that the things are coming in because they're all the things you've done great work on, aren't they? It's steel, concrete, chemicals.
yeah,
Excellent to see.
yeah,
Everyone feels very much the
exactly.
same.
That is aligned with our expertise. So definitely metals and chemicals are the sector we can provide insights on. Please keep typing it as we go, but for the time's sake, I'm going to keep it moving. Next slide, just a quick note on the session norms. We will start with a short presentation followed by panel discussion. Please keep your microphone muted when others are speaking, but feel free to share comments or questions in the chat. Ollie and my team will be monitoring those questions, and we will be able to answer some of the questions in the end, but maybe not all of it. And looking forward to the discussion. With that, I'm going to pass the floor to Ping Tian to walk us through the webinar series.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hao. Hi everyone. My name is Pingtian Chen. I am a senior associate at RMI's Energy Transition Academy program. We're focusing on developing all of these learning programs for different energy stakeholders across the world. So for today's sessions, we are focusing on low carbon procurement. Today's session is the first in our three-part low carbon procurement webinar series hosted by RMI in partnership with the Scope 3 peer group. We'll use these sessions to explore practical strategies and examples for implementing low carbon procurement, drawing directly from our new corporate low carbon procurement how-to guide, which is available on RMI's ETA platform. So we call this how-to guide because it's very interactive. It's designed to make low carbon purchasing easier to put into action. And it breaks down the steps and shows how small changes in procurement can add up to meaningful results. So you can scan the QR code on this slide to register for upcoming sessions or access the how-to guide and other resources. And each will have three sessions in total in this series. Each session builds on the last. Today we're focusing on demystifying decision making. In December, we're focusing on implementation strategies. And in January, we'll dive into sector-specific examples. Next slide, please. So here's what our 1 hour together will look like. We'll start with a brief content overview highlighting why low carbon procurement matters and how buyers can identify suppliers and product options. Then we'll hear from guest speakers who share how their organizations are putting these ideas into practice. After that, we'll have a small interactive discussion. Finally, we'll close with some practical resources and details on what's coming next in this series. And with that, I'll hand over to Iris for the content overview.
Thanks very much, Ping Tian. I'm Iris. I'm an associate with the Climate Intelligence program here at RMI. I'm going to give us a content overview of some of the sections we'll be covering here in the how-to guide today, and then I'm going to pass it off to the exciting part, which is our panel discussion. So let's start here with why it's important to act now. So beyond cost and quality, sustainability has become a really important factor in procurement decisions. So it's no longer just about that nice to have. It's being driven by things like consumer expectations and regulatory pressures and growing corporate responsibility. So to help companies take action, we've created this how-to guide that breaks down low carbon procurement into some clear and manageable steps. This guide is structured around 3 modules. It's meant to be a practical, step-by-step playbook for integrating sustainability into your procurement processes. Within it, you'll find tools, templates, case studies, and a whole bunch of resources that are designed to help teams make these informed decisions and move from these goals into real impact. One of the key takeaways from our work is that corporate demand really matters. So when companies choose low carbon products, they can create a positive feedback loop that drives decarbonization across industries. And it starts with a bit of a learning curve. So early movers, they start by gaining experience and they share that knowledge, and that creates economies of scale where those costs can start to fall. So that network effect kicks in as more buyers join, and that helps build confidence and reduce risk. And all of that reinforces things like technology innovation, which accelerates progress. And we've already seen this play out in several sectors, including renewable electricity and sustainable aviation fuel. And we've seen that the market tends to follow the lead of corporate buyers, and we can move towards that tipping point where low carbon products don't just help you meet those sustainability goals, but are also more cost effective and higher value for business in the long run. So here's how we have designed this webinar and this how-to guide to put all of this into practice. In this session, we'll focus on three big questions that procurement teams sort of face when trying to decarbonize. The first being, how do you identify suppliers with that high potential for collaboration? Which low carbon product options are best suited for your goals? And how do you create the internal momentum needed to succeed? Each of these modules includes step-by-step guidance, decision tools, and examples from companies who have taken the step and implemented some of these processes. So the first step here is understanding your supplier landscape, which partners are ready to lead with you and which may need some more support. This module walks through how to assess supplier maturity by using both fundamental indicators like emissions data and governance, as well as sector-specific indicators like recycled content or traceability. It's a structured data-based approach to identifying where engagement will have the most impact, and it'll help you prioritize your supplier relationships more effectively. This guide provides resources such as a scoring sheet to assess supplier maturity and activities to complete to progress supplier engagement. So this here is an overview of the score sheet that we include in the guide to help assess supplier maturity using both fundamental indicators and sector-specific indicators. It helps assign scores that can be totaled up to categorize suppliers into beginner, intermediate, and advanced categories. And this is meant to help you see where those biggest opportunities lie. This process gives you a structured, data-driven way to prioritize engagement and make supplier collaboration more strategic and impactful. So once you've mapped out your suppliers, the next step is figuring out what to buy, which is sort of the product option side of the equation. This guide breaks that down into 3 steps. The first being to explore options that already exist, to find those low carbon products available on the market that can help you meet those near-term goals. The second is investing in emerging solutions by looking into early stage technologies that can drive deep decarbonization over time. And the third is to learn to make informed decisions, because knowing how to assess those product claims and avoid greenwashing can help ensure credibility of the products that you're buying. So the goal here is to help buyers balance quick wins with long-term transformation, supporting that market growth while keeping integrity and data transparency at the center. This guide provides lists of existing and emerging product options to help you gather key information from suppliers. And it maps out sector-specific technologies and shows you the key considerations when it comes to assessing these claims. Now, this slide here shows a snapshot of several of those resources that we include in the guide. On the top left, we show existing options like certified low-carbon products, recycled content materials, or company-specific low-emissions brands. And on the top right, we're looking at some emerging options, things like net zero production technologies or some first of their kind low emissions materials. The guide helps you evaluate these options by showing the implications for procurement features and limitations. The two tables at the bottom here walk through how to make purchases that are credible and comparable, and how investments stay impactful and scalable and aligned with those net zero goals. Essentially, these resources provide a roadmap for how procurement can directly support both immediate and long-term decarbonization. Now, the third piece of the puzzle here is internal alignment, because it's really important to have that internal momentum in order to progress these goals. So this section focuses on how to build that organizational momentum to support low carbon procurement. It starts with securing leadership support by helping executives understand how procurement decisions can influence competitiveness and risk. Then it moves to establishing effective governance by making sure climate goals are embedded across teams and business functions. And then it's all about taking action by integrating sustainability directly into sourcing and supplier engagement. So each of these steps includes templates that you can use to help engage the leadership teams in your organization. It includes governance examples and case studies to help make all of these implementations and changes more tangible. So one of the resources you'll find in this section is a set of progressive steps and best practices to build internal momentum. The first is to create shared knowledge and responsibilities by setting clear KPIs, upskilling teams, and ensuring accountability across departments. The second here is to incentivize ownership by aligning procurement performance metrics with climate targets. And the third is to price carbon into that decision making, whether that's through a shadow price, an internal fee, or another mechanism that makes emissions part of those business choices. So these steps turn sustainability from sort of a side quest or side initiative into core business strategy, so that sustainability is integrated into the culture and helps accelerate progress towards those net zero goals. So I know that was a lot of information. I'll go back for a second, but all of this information is in our how-to guide. You can explore that more in the QR code that was put up earlier in this slide deck. We'll show it again at the end. It's on the RMI Energy Transition Academy's website, and it's linked in the webinar registration page as well. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Hao now to kick off our panel discussion, which is going to be the highlight of our program today.
Yes, thank you so much, Iris. Exactly. Now we're moving into the most exciting part of today's webinar, our panel discussion. We're thrilled to be joined by three incredible speakers. If you move on to the next slide. So Duart from Leon Basel, Matt from Schneider Electric, and Betty from GAP, Oxford Initiative for Green Aligned Public Procurement. So they will be sharing their experiences and insights on the topics that Iris just covered their from setting ambition and strategy of their company, how to engage suppliers on the low carbon procurement options, to evaluating the performance of the product. We will be able to take maybe 2 to 3 questions from the audience. So I do encourage you to submit your question in the chat if you would like to engage with us. Let's start. Could each of you briefly introduce yourself and share a little bit about your role and focus within the organization? Let's see. Let's start with Matt.
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. It's good to meet you, and thanks so much, Hao and RMI and Ali, for inviting me here and joining. I just want to first say that the information that's provided in this what Iris just went through is really wonderful. There's a lot of information there, and do take the time to dig in and find some value there. My name is Matt Seiler. I work at Schneider Electric, and I'm focused on our Scope 3 emissions as a transformation leader. If you're not familiar with Schneider, our goal is to be your energy technology partner. We're working to electrify, automate, and digitize every industry, business, and home, driving efficiency and sustainability. In my role, I manage our Scope 3 upstream emissions, and that includes building and supporting teams and infrastructure to try to actualize those reductions.
Thank you so much, Matt. Stuart, you're the next.
Yeah, sure. Well, I just want to join Matt saying I'm honored to be here and really great being in this session. And thank you for the invite and the great preparation. Yes, I'm Dorte Lawrence. I'm a Director for Sustainable Procurement at LyondellBasell, LYB. In case you don't know, LyondellBasell, LYB is a leader in the global chemistry, creating solutions for everyday sustainable living. We're one of the world's largest producers of polymers and leader in polyolefin technologies, where we develop, manufacture, and market high-quality, innovative products. LyondellBasell is also a member, and it's important to mention here because I will talk about it later on. We are a member of Together for Sustainability, TFS, an initiative that drives sustainability and tries to standardize methodologies around sustainability in the value chain of chemical industry. And also very, very happy to mention that LYB holds the presidency of TFS in the second term already. I lead sustainable procurement. I established sustainable procurement as a global organization at LYB in 2021, where we focus really on supplier sustainability performance, which also includes the supplier Scope 3 engagement programs up to decision-making for corporate accounting, but also low carbon procurement. Looking forward to more exchanging information today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stuart. And then Betty.
Hi, thank you for having me. And yes, allow me to be the third echo of gratitude for the content and the sort of coalition of a lot of the work many of us probably have been doing organically or striving to do, to sort of see it in a framework, I think is incredibly helpful, and to see the trajectory that companies can take along this journey and not feel daunted by where to get started, but also not just stop with where you've started, but to continue to progress in this work. I think that's why a lot of us love to focus on supply chains, because they are never ending in multiple sectors and geographies, and you can never just sort of like achieve it. You always get more. And so hopefully we're all enlivened by that spirit. But wonderful to be with you. My name is Betty Cremens. Quick background, had the privilege of joining the then Carbon Disclosure Project, which has now become CDP, just as the CDP supply chain program was taking off. Walmart had started asking their suppliers to disclose emissions, and I was brought on to teach Walmart suppliers what greenhouse gas accounting was. So I would get questions like, we don't have any greenhouses. Why are you asking me about greenhouse gas emissions? And it's exciting to see we've made a lot of progress, but I'm sure you probably still have some suppliers that might have similar questions. So I had the privilege of being at CDP for well over a decade, growing the CDP supply chain program, working with many more companies to start to think about Scope 3 before we even had a Scope 3 standard. And then we had Scope 3 and then science-based targets and the Paris Agreement and all of those evolutions that have increasingly shown the interconnectedness between companies and the need to engage both upstream and downstream through your value chain. So worked with many companies and many governments to start to move this work forward. I then had the privilege of joining the White House in the last administration to lead the federal government's net zero procurement strategy for the US government, the largest buyer in the world at $630 billion in spend. So if you think your supply chain is big, it's not. It's all relative. And got to work with a lot of aerospace and defense companies, got to lead the federal Buy Clean initiative on cement and steel decarbonization. And then now wear many, many hats. But one of the most proud roles I have is as Senior Policy Associate at Oxford Net Zero, where I'm chairing this work called OxGap, which is the Oxford Initiative for Green Aligned Public Procurement, where we've been interviewing governments, national and subnational governments around the world to look at frameworks for how they're integrating climate aligned activities into their procurement. And we have some exciting announcements coming up at COP30. So it's an opportune time to be with all of you.
Thank you so much, Betty. It's great to have deep expertise across public and private sector and across different industries. So I'm really excited. Now here comes my first question. Could you please tell us a little bit about your organization's sustainability goals and procurement priorities? I think this is more for Stuart and Matt, and then Betty, I will have a more tailored question for you. Maybe we start with Stuart. Could you please share a little bit about the story of LYB?
Sure. So as a chemical company, we want to feel and we need to feel responsible, and that's why we developed our sustainability vision around 3 global challenges, and that is ending plastic waste. So here we talk about circularity, not just low carbon, but zero carbon products, fully recycled products, taking climate action, of course, which also leads to our climate targets of Scope 1 and Scope 2 reduction goals, around 42% by 2030, net zero by 2050. And also we have several more climate targets, but one of them is also to reduce Scope 3 emissions by 2030 relative to a 2020 baseline. And that is also what drives the effort that we do in sustainable procurement. And regarding sustainable procurement specifically, we have then established a goal all around supplier insights into supplier sustainability performance that we run through supplier evaluations. We have a public goal that we overachieved in 2024 already, and we've now expanded that goal to 80% coverage of key supplier assessments by 2027. So that means also by applying ESG criteria, we can already kind of build our relationship and our engagements with our suppliers based on those insights. Another thing that we did is, and that's all very much tied together, is we developed a supplier Scope 3 supplier engagement strategy. And I think that's also what more we want to talk about today is we talked about is we need to prioritize supplier engagements with the goal of collecting and ultimately improving product carbon footprints for our corporate accounting, but also for our decision process on low carbon procurement. So I talked about we have a circularity goal. So we are very much integrated also with our corporate sustainability team, making sure we get the carbon footprints from our fossil products, but also all our low carbon offerings and comparing them and making sure we contribute them to our customer offerings, including our own carbon footprints. So this is where the whole chain from our suppliers down to our customers is fully connected. So we engage with our suppliers. Can talk about different engagement methods later on, but we mainly engage with our high-emitting feedstock suppliers, raw material suppliers, so that we understand their product carbon footprints of the materials we buy from them, and then really we explore collaboration opportunities. It's a long journey. It's not an easy undertaking, but that's the approach we've been chosen, and I think it goes pretty well, and I think Matt can probably chime in. I mean, Schneider Electric has been pretty successful in that as well, even much better.
Thanks so much, Stuart. It's fascinating to hear how the sustainability and procurement goals are aligning internally, and how supplier engagement is central to the Scope 3 decarbonization strategy. Yes, Matt, your
Yes,
story.
and I don't think that this work overall has been correct anywhere. So, we're all working to improve all the time. We do have at Schneider a range of sustainability goals. There are a number through 2025, which is almost over, and so there will be a new set of KPIs that will be shared from 2026 to 2030 and help us achieve those 2030 goals. They cover a wide array of SDG, I would say, linked big S topics. So, of course, we have emissions reductions with a focus on our top suppliers, but also absolute reductions, saved and avoided emission targets, but also a lot of targets that go beyond emissions, like accessing energy and gender diversity and training for energy management. Um, and you can take a look at our website. There's a lot that's on there. And I think in addition to these external facing KPIs, we also have some internal KPIs that are tied to executive compensation, which helps drive motivation and action, some of which are focused on upstream emissions reductions, which is really helpful. We also have, in the context of this conversation, helpful, and then also an SBTI scope 1, 2, and 3 absolute 25% target. And when I think about all these different targets, and Dirta Tret kind of mentioned this, they're all interlinked. And there's also a lot of different teams that are working on different aspects of this. And so, with a lot of teams, we're trying to find the right way to build efficiency because sometimes we're working with the same data. There's a lot of overlapping work. And this is mentioned in the RMI slash scope 3 peer group guide that was been shared today. But we've found some success having this hybrid structure where we have folks on the corporate level, and I operate from the sustainability team, the sustainability function, but I have to work very closely with folks in procurement, folks in finance, folks in IT, and the business units to kind of figure out how are we approaching all of these different KPIs with like the most efficiency. So there's like a lot of the sustainability folks embedded everywhere, and then we have corporate folks. So it's like this is the nature of the hybrid. So maybe I'll just pause there. That sort of represents our overall sustainability targets and approach.
Thanks, Matt. I think it's super helpful to know how you structure internally the governance and to help support the internal momentum. The hybrid setup that you mentioned is very interesting. Create kind of more knowledge sharing, and also the KPI kind of improves the accountability of different departments on
Right.
to work on the same topic. So yeah, really thanks for sharing that. And now I'm turning. We've heard stories from companies, and Betty, I would like to hear from you. You've guided hundreds of companies, as you said, and supported governments to integrate sustainability into procurement. What do you think is the most critical elements for building internal momentum?
Well, it's wonderful to hear these two examples because often I think people expect me to say, well, calculate your scope 3 emissions and then engage your suppliers based on hotspots. But actually, with all of this momentum that we finally have through supply chains, I think it's really critical to make it really relevant to your business and to remember that your suppliers are companies too. Often they operate they're even larger than you. They're in different geographies and different political conditions in different sectors at different levels of maturity, but also like different economic conditions and different incentives. And so in some supply chains, your suppliers are the same sector as you, and you can join those really collaborative platforms like we were talking about Together for Sustainability, other sector specific groups, but other times they're in completely different sectors. And I think companies need to increasingly ask, not tell suppliers, so you can share your expectations of scope 1, 2, and 3 and targets and reductions and risk. But then you need to ask your suppliers, what can you do to help me achieve my goals? Where are you on this journey? And then what's holding you back from doing more? Because I think we are in this space where, we've sent a lot of questionnaires and a lot of data requests, but we need to start asking as much as telling and making it a collaborative discussion. I also think it's really critical to tie it into procurement. Matt was talking about that really matrix management. Like if the request or the discussion comes from a procurement representative to a salesperson at your supplier, they're going to be like, I don't know what to do with this data, and then they'll go back to their sustainability person and say, hey, our largest customer or this really critical potential sales lead is asking us for this, and that creates that internal dialogue. I've seen so many companies start to quantify how many of their customers are asking for this information, and that just gives all the more buy-in for them to make increasingly long-term, longer-term ROI decisions and investments into this work, which just benefits everybody's supply chain. So within companies, it's cost, quality, delivery within supply chains, and then you can add sustainability into that. At the US government, it was all about the three E's: economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. And we could never leverage procurement to drive our climate goals. We had to show how climate, both emissions and risk, impacted our supply chain and our ability to continue to deliver on economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, and then increasingly show how acting on these actually benefited us and taxpayer dollars and the greater delivery of public goods. And so it was never about how we use procurement for our climate goals. It was about how climate impacts our procurement. And I think that was the critical unlock of action in many, many sectors.
Thanks so much, Betty. That's super interesting from both public and private sector, how you see the commonalities and also differences. But collaborative strategy is super important. And always keep in mind that making sustainability relevant to core business priority, not just additional requirements. It can help improve the internal momentum. Now, let's turn to the second question about how and what. So I would like to understand a little bit how you work with your suppliers to identify and source low carbon products, and what are the key evaluation criteria for those low carbon products that you have received. Maybe we can start with Matt.
Yeah, sure. I think this is such an important question. And when I think about how do we identify just by itself what are low carbon products, it just makes me think a bit about like the evolution that's happened over the past maybe just 3 or 4 years, where we moved from corporate accounting focus for how we identify the emissions of what we're buying to a greater focus on the products specifically, and how do we assess the emissions of those products. And this is a really important shift, because when we talk about making reductions, that's an important level to assess those reductions. And so I would say, and Betty kind of mentioned this, and Dirta as well, there is the initial work of the segmentation. That's like the classic activities where we're identifying the overall products and which suppliers and where do we want to focus our time, which types of materials, the maturity of those suppliers. But then you quickly get into this question about the product footprints of them, and how do you assess who do we want to partner with, and what suppliers are able to provide stuff for us. And so I think yeah, there are some material types where this is even more critical than others. Like for metals, there are other some information that you can gather about the types of materials or where it's manufactured or the scrap content that can help give an indication of what is low emissions. But others, like electronics, is really tricky. There's not like one key for that. And so working with the suppliers to capture is on its own is really important. There are some other assessments. I mean, there's like the cost aspect of low emissions, there's quality, there is the location, there is the long-term supply potential. And like I'm working from sustainability myself, and so we rely for most of this, if not all, on procurement to manage it. So there is like a key intersection, how we work together. I think just like the last thing to say is there's work that we need to do right now that will impact what happens in the future. So we have these 2030 goals, and we need to start building the relationships and set ourselves up for success in 2030. At the same time, by capturing and working with suppliers to elevate their maturity to share product carbon footprints, we can start kind of achieving some of these goals or getting better quality right now. So there really is a balance. There's more to say there, but maybe I'll just pause there and have the other panelists add on.
Thanks, Matt. It's good to hear the steps that you're taking, and fully agree with you that there are sectoral nuances that we have to figure out with the suppliers, but also to learn from the industry practices as an ongoing practice. Now, Stuart, you have the sectoral expertise from like the chemical and gas sector. What's your practice?
Yeah, I mean it's very much evolving, and I mean it's interesting. I mean we started like a few years back, very pragmatic with a Betty, you mentioned it, hotspot heat map analysis, and then we were slowly moving that into advanced maturity models, identifying climate maturity on supplier level only. And Matt, you made an important point. I mean, the product level is then something, a dimension that came into it as well, because why were we doing it? Eventually, yes, we want to reduce our scope 3 and we have our targets for ESG emissions, but eventually we want to also drive the business case. We want to sell our low carbon offerings or recycled products. And this is where then we added the additional dimension of, you mentioned it, location, also which are the sites and the products that really contribute to our company's low carbon offering for our customers. So we really connected it from an end-to-end perspective, and we're still going through that phase, and everyone knows how it's a journey, right? So we are now bringing a full value chain, carbon value chain together. But even segmentizing them, we were very pragmatic. We used stakeholder score, we identified emission impacts, and really engaged. We were driving different engagement methods. I mean, you have this bulk of suppliers. I would say I mean, we also took the effort of engaging them through webinars, newsletters, toolkits. But at the end, you only want to, mainly you can move the needle with most of the high emitting suppliers. And that's where we were then driving bilateral engagement. So it's not just, like Betty, you said it so nicely. I mean, it's not just telling them, hey, please just send me a PDF. It's not just one conversation. It's a collaboration, and it's a relationship that really goes on for years. So we ask them still, we tell what we do, and good thing is we walk the talk. So that's so important. I wouldn't feel comfortable going out to suppliers telling them, oh, you do PCF calculation. We wouldn't be doing it ourselves. So yes, we ask them to share cradle to gate product carbon footprints. And here our role in TFS comes in. So we ask them to use this product carbon footprint exchange solution called Green, and to apply or follow either the ISO methodology for product carbon footprint calculation or the TFS product carbon footprint guideline. And for those who haven't heard about it, the guideline, and it's also being mentioned in the guidebook that's been provided today. It's an end-to-end solution for the chemical industry to monitor, manage, and take the steps to reduce GHG emissions. Launched in 2022, but also designed to cover both corporate accounting and allow suppliers and companies to calculate product carbon footprints. The exchange solution starts to play out really nicely. I mean, we use it for our product carbon footprints coming in from suppliers, but also share our own carbon footprints with our customers. And it's an exchange solution based on a Siemens called Green technology, and allows really businesses to conduct cross-company comparisons. So this is really key, to have the apple and apple comparison of data. I mean, yeah, we all know about the reliability of data. So this one is really helping us to make good comparisons and also measure reductions. So that's really helpful. And then, as I mentioned, we also have a lot of resources that we leverage from TFS, and everyone, especially all our suppliers, TFS members, can use it. It's a TFS Academy, and it offers accessible trainings tailored to supplier needs, and which then also help to accelerate suppliers' readiness. And there's much more. So, I mean, offering on PPA support and, the energy program, right, of Schneider Electric is also a great example to make sure the suppliers companies move from fossil to renewable energy. So there's a lot of things, but I just wanted to pick those here, and yeah, hope that brings some insights into how we do it.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear your story and all the tools that you've shared. And TFS has great resources that have contributed to the guide that we have put out. So definitely check out. We are happy to share their resources as a follow-up from this webinar as well. Now, Betty, you have the perspective from the public procurement, and I saw there was a question in the chat asking about how to guide that's RMI's how to guide is designed for private sector, and how can that serve the purpose of the public procurement? What can be referenced? I think procurement has a lot of commonalities when it comes to how to evaluate products. So there are definitely things that can be referenced, but hope to hear from you your thoughts on this and on the question as well.
Sure. So I would say I think there's a lot of commonalities, and a lot of the work that we did at the US federal government was built upon case study examples and evidence from the private sector, but there are also a lot of differences. So like in government, the absolute worst thing is to have a no bid situation where you put criteria out there in a contract that no one can achieve. And then you're open to lawsuits and all sorts of really messy conversations with your suppliers. And we also really couldn't get too far ahead of the private sector because we were reliant on them to tell us what was possible. We can't really do supplier engagement in the government. Everything has to be binary. Did you achieve the criteria or not? And so to making all of this really messy, wonky, we're all on a journey trajectory work into binary yes or no decisions was really difficult. And then interestingly in this conversation, actually in the US government, the strongest capabilities we had was at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and their strong eco-label program. So EPA has been evaluating eco-labels in the marketplace and third party for many, many years, and had a really strong program around specific areas where the private sector had a maturity. So things like EPEAT for electronics or Energy Star for energy efficiency appliances. Some of them are government-led and some of them are private sector-led, but that was where we had the strongest expertise. But then if you do the hotspot analysis for $630 billion of spend, electronics aren't really going to show up in your hotspot analysis when you run the largest military in the world and you have billions and billions of dollars of infrastructure investments, for example. And so we had to sort of take an approach where we made a broader approach around the product strategy. And the non-government words that I could use to describe this was what we buy, who we buy from, and how we buy. And we structured everything of our net zero procurement strategy within those three buckets. So again, we started with products, eco-labels. We did rulemaking in the federal acquisition regulation around maximizing our procurement to the maximum extent practicable around eco-label products and product level standards, and expanded the list of eco-labels that we were evaluating. The second area is who we buy from. This is where we were doing rulemaking around corporate level requirements. So do you disclose your greenhouse gas emissions? Do you have a science-based target? Have you done a climate risk analysis? And do you have a trajectory plan? So criteria around the companies themselves that were our critical suppliers who had received more than a threshold of procurement from the federal government in the past and were looking to do future bids. And then the third area that is still nascent but is the most exciting part is the how we buy. And this is the contracting stuff. So this is where we were working on putting social cost of greenhouse gases evaluations into contracting, where we were looking at climate risk analysis over the duration of a contract delivery, and all of the ways that we were able to take the specific nuance of government procurement and drive the world forward. So things like moving it from a product to a service, or from a purchase to a lease, or circular economy considerations, or life cycle analysis considerations into contracting. And that's where you just have thousands and thousands of flowers blooming, and then you need to engage the 60,000 procurement professionals across government to make sure that they have full understanding and literacy in this work and can show how this plays out in multiple contracts. So we had some really great examples of of digitizing resources and putting our data centers into off-site locations and third parties that were driving down emissions. We had some interesting work in Buy Clean on decarbonizing things like concrete and steel and asphalt through procurements with EPDs, environmental product declarations. But there's so many more examples to go into and many more to do. So I think driving it into what we buy, who we buy from, and how we buy sort of helped us bucketize this work, but also create a holistic strategy. Because for each sector, you're going to need one, two, or all three of those levers. And we could pull them all within government, but we had to sequence it appropriately in lockstep with the private sector partners.
Thank you so much, Betty. Those are super valuable examples. I do see a lot of commonalities around who to buy, like the criteria you evaluate suppliers, the what to buy, like the product evaluation stuff, and then how to buy. There are more complementarities, and this is the topic that we're going to cover in the next webinar as well. But definitely want to cross-check the resources from both sides and make sure that it's helpful for the ecosystem. Okay, recognizing that we only have a few minutes left, my last question, if you could just use one or two sentences, that would be super helpful. What is the biggest challenge that you're facing, and what kind of resource or support that you are seeking, including this guide or webinar series, and what can be most helpful for you to address your challenge? And Betty, let's start from you.
Sure. So I'm excited by all of your resources that you're pulling together. To add one of our own through Oxford, I mentioned that we're working on a really practical white paper for public procurement, looking at the framework that I shared across the US government and working with Japan and South Africa and India and a bunch of European Union countries. And Brazil has been really leading the way. Canada, Mexico, I could go on, and subnational governments as well, many cities and states, and the frameworks that they're using to move forward the sort of who we buy from, what we buy, and how we buy framework. So look out for the white paper coming out soon, and we'll be opening consultation on that. And we really see that as a toolkit to help many more public procurement professionals understand how to do this, and to encourage more private sector folks to join the public sector to help your governments move their procurement into more climate aligned work. We're really proud to be part of COP30's Action Agenda 22, which is all around climate aligned public procurement. And so we're going to be running workshops and a declaration, and really trying to get more global action in this work. And I will also just add, our work at the federal government remains publicly available in the archives, so please reference it and move it forward. We did some really great work scorecarding companies, and we put out our Scope 3 footprint publicly, because all public spending is public information. And so the best show your work example of Scope 3 accounting comes from governments, because there is nothing confidential in government spending, and therefore we can all learn from each other in those big numbers, and then start to apply it within the corporate sector context. So lots of allies across this work now. So lots to learn from each other.
Thank you so much, Betty. Stuart, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I want to highlight, I mean, there's probably a lot of common challenges and good tools and resources through RMI, TFS, but I wanted to mention also challenges that are pretty unique to our sector. So we are very much upstream in the value chain, and I mentioned we work with oil and gas, and I probably everyone who works with oil and gas industry or is in there will probably know what I'm going to talk about. It's the lack of sector-specific guidelines or SBTI methodology. So there's really no, that creates certainly uncertainty and leads to also to different interpretation of emission requirements. And that's one of the things. I don't really have a solution for that now. It just continues. It's trust, confidence also into what we ask for, and really getting into the methodologies we use. So that's what we continuously drive, and we have to be patient. As I said, it's a journey. And then the other challenges as well in the same sector is, I mean, we work with a lot of midstream suppliers, traders, and they have Scope 3 resources, Scope 3 emissions, less Scope 1 and Scope 2. And they also lack influence over their suppliers. So that's also another engagement that we need to drive. And it's, again, continuous engagements, collaborations will help to overcome this in the next year. So I'm not saying it's going to be there tomorrow.
Thanks. That's a good call for industry action. Now, Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, super fast. Look, and this is talked about many times, but like the supplier maturity and the ability to share product details is critical. We need to understand the emissions of what we're buying. So there are lots of resources that are out there about that. I think that's a focus. The second thing that I think is really critical that was touched upon several times during this discussion is the costs sometimes linked to the green premium. And how do we manage that? And this is a really tricky thing. And I think what it comes back to a lot of the internal alignment work that could really benefit speaking with one voice from what the customers are demanding. How does that flow into our products? How do we drive those reductions? How do we work with suppliers and showcase that there really is a value here? Making that business case for why we need to move in this direction and enabling the whole value chain to get on board and do the things that are required to reduce our emissions is really important. And I think there's data pieces linked to that. There's finance, there's procurement, there's roles for everybody. So how we tell that story and how we work towards that, I think I just wanted to highlight the internal collaboration needed and the business case work.
Thank you so much, Matt. Yes, creating business case and also a foster internal collaboration is definitely how our how-to guide aims to achieve. So definitely check out the resources if you have the same question and challenges. We're only 2 minutes left. Just want to wrap up by saying that thanks so much for everyone joining today. We've talked about the how to identify suppliers for collaboration, how to identify low carbon product options, key evaluation criteria, and thanks for all the insights from the great panelists and from my team. You can scan the QR code to access today's resources, but I saw that Betty also shared some additional resources from Oxcap Research. Definitely check it out. We will share the webinar recording and the slides of today with you. And we also have a broader range of knowledge pieces that you can check out from our slide.